I had never heard anyone talk about rebounding in such a scientific way.
He was bad, man. Dennis was a machine.
His career high, 34 rebounds, 18 of them at the offensive end.
There are loud superstars. And then there was Dennis Rodman. Before the hair dye, before the outings in Vegas, before the tabloid headlines and technical fouls, NBA veterans already knew one thing for sure. Dennis Rodman was not wired like anyone else in the league. He didn't just play basketball differently, he lived differently. He slacked when others trained, he partied when others recovered, and somehow, when the ball went up, he was always exactly where it needed to land. This is a league filled with egos, alpha personalities, and controlled chaos, but even among Hall of Famers, Dennis Rodman stood alone. Teammates didn't just call him unpredictable, opponents didn't just call him annoying, coaches didn't just call him difficult. They all used the same word: crazy, but not reckless, not lazy, and definitely not accidental. Because behind the wild behavior was a basketball savant who studied angles like a madman, who memorized shot rotations, who could dominate a game without ever calling a play for himself. While stars chased points, Rodman chased rebounds. NBA legends have since admitted something surprising. They didn't always understand him, they didn't always like him, but they trusted him with championships. In this video, you'll hear first-hand stories from players and coaches who were there. Moments when Dennis Rodman disappeared for days, showed up at practice like nothing happened, and then shut down MVPs on the biggest stages imaginable. This is about the madness behind the method. Because Dennis Rodman wasn't just crazy, he was dangerously effective. Shawn Kemp didn't hesitate when reflecting on the 1996 NBA Finals. In his mind, the reason the Chicago Bulls beat the Seattle Supersonics wasn't just Michael Jordan or Scottie Pippen. It was Dennis Rodman. Kemp has said Seattle simply had no answer for him. The Sonics matched up well on paper. They had size, athleticism, and multiple defenders to throw at Chicago's stars. But Rodman attacked the series in a way that completely flipped the balance. He didn't care about scoring. He cared about control, of space, of rebounds, of momentum.
But Michael wasn't the reason. He didn't beat us in the championship. He did not beat us, man. We was on his ass. He didn't beat us. Dennis Rodman's the one who beat us. We had no answer for his ass, man.
Really?
We had no answer for Dennis Rodman. I mean, every time that they needed a second shot or something special or extra rebound or tip in, this motherfucker was flying and winking and...
Every missed shot felt like it belonged to Rodman. Kemp described how possessions never really ended against him. You'd force a tough jumper, feel like you'd done your job, and then suddenly Rodman was there, tapping the ball out, diving on the floor, or creating a second chance that crushed morale. What made it worse was the constant pressure. Rodman talked non-stop, battled for position early, and wore opponents down mentally as much as physically. Kemp admitted that no matter how well Seattle executed, Rodman found a way to disrupt the rhythm. Bill Wennington saw Dennis Rodman from the inside, and what stood out most to him was how perfectly Rodman filled a void the Bulls desperately needed. After Horace Grant left Chicago, there were real questions about who could replace his rebounding, defense, and toughness at power forward. Wennington has said Rodman wasn't just a replacement, he was an upgrade in exactly the areas that mattered. He brought something entirely different. He attacked the glass with an obsession Wennington had never seen before, turning missed shots into extra possessions and defensive stops into instant momentum swings. For a team built around Jordan and Pippen, that was invaluable.
Well, quite honestly, he was exactly what the Bulls needed that time. The year before, we had lost Horace Grant, and our rebounding at the 4 position was not good at all. We didn't have a great rebounder, and Dennis came in and gave us all of that and more because he's really a great defender, and gave Phil different options. If we wanted to go small, Dennis could play the 5 spot and really guard anyone. And you'll see a lot of the games against Shaq, he would guard Shaq and do as well as anyone else could do against him, and if not even better. And obviously when you watch him in the finals against Karl Malone, he got inside Karl's head and really took Karl out of the game for the most part, and just really was perfect for the team, because Michael and Scotty were the real scorers in the starting five, and Dennis complemented them so well because he didn't need the ball in his hands.
Wennington has explained that Rodman allowed the Bulls to stay disciplined on offense because they trusted him to clean everything up. Guards could pressure harder. Shooters could take confident looks. Everyone knew Rodman would be there battling for the ball. What made Rodman even more essential was his understanding of his role. Wennington emphasized that Rodman never needed shots or attention. He needed impact, and in that second championship run, he delivered it every night. James Worthy played against some of the most physical teams the NBA has ever seen, but even by those standards, Dennis Rodman stood out, especially during his Detroit Piston years. Worthy has said that watching Rodman in that era was almost unbelievable, because he didn't look like a star, yet completely controlled games. In Detroit, Rodman thrived in chaos. Worthy recalled how Rodman embraced the grind of those Pistons teams, doing all the dirty work that made them so difficult to beat. He didn't need plays called for him. He didn't even need the ball. His impact came from relentless defense, constant movement, and an unmatched feel for where the ball was going.
He was bad, man. Dennis was a machine. In Detroit, he was a machine, man. He could guard anybody on the floor. He had the psychological games. He'd get in your head.
What amazed Worthy most was Rodman's energy. Night after night, he attacked rebounds like his career depended on each one. Worthy has said it felt like Rodman was everywhere at once, battling bigger players in the paint, switching on to guards, then swinging back into position before anyone else could react. Against Detroit, nothing came easy. Worthy admitted that Rodman made simple plays exhausting. Every cut was bumped, every rebound was contested, and every possession felt longer than it should. John Salley played alongside Dennis Rodman in Detroit, and later watched him up close in Chicago, and he's been clear about one thing. Rodman changed how people understood value on a basketball court. Salley has said Dennis didn't need points to dominate a game, because rebounds were his currency. Rodman treated rebounding like an art form. Salley explained that Dennis could finish a game with 0 or 2 points and still completely control it. While other players measured impact by the scoreboard, Rodman measured it by possessions. All he needed was the ball coming off the rim, and it almost always did.
Take this, Dennis Rodman, this one stat where he has no points and 18 rebounds.
What impressed Salley most was how those rebounds translated directly into wins. 1 extra possession could swing momentum. 5 extra possessions could break a team. Rodman created those advantages without calling attention to himself, quietly tilting the game in his team's favor. Salley has pointed out that Dennis didn't chase stats for ego. He chased control. He knew that if he owned the glass, he owned the pace of the game. Fast breaks started earlier. Opponents lost confidence. Stars got frustrated. Scottie Pippen saw Dennis Rodman's greatness long before they became teammates. Back when Chicago was battling Detroit in the late 80s and early 90s, Pippen could always tell Rodman was different. While the spotlight stayed on the stars, Rodman was quietly deciding games in ways that didn't show up on highlight reels. Pippen has said that even then, Rodman felt impossible to account for. He wasn't the biggest or the strongest, but he always arrived first. Every missed shot seemed to draw him in like a magnet, and Chicago learned the hard way that stopping Detroit meant dealing with Rodman's presence on the glass.
He was a winner. He was a leader, and his basketball IQ is off the charts. And I had an opportunity to experience that playing alongside him. Everyone knows that, he was, a part of a great team, but they didn't realize how great a rebounder Dennis was when he was with the bad boys.
By the time Rodman joined the Bulls, Pippen didn't see him as a risk or a question mark. He saw a finished product. Pippen has gone on record saying that when Dennis arrived in Chicago, he was already the best rebounder of all time. Not just for his numbers, but for how he took rebounds away from opponents who needed them most. For Pippen, adding Rodman wasn't about managing chaos. It was about unlocking dominance. Dennis didn't just fit the Bulls, he completed them. Isaiah Thomas watched Dennis Rodman develop up close in Detroit, and what stood out to him wasn't just the effort, it was the obsession. Thomas has explained that Dennis treated rebounding like a craft, something to be studied and perfected, not left to chance or hustle alone. Isaiah recalled how Rodman would watch his own teammates shoot during practice, not for form or release, but for outcome. He tracked how the ball came off the rim, which shooters produced long rebounds, which misses died near the basket. Dennis wasn't just playing the odds, he was memorizing them.
He was a basketball genius. Not only a rebounding genius, but defensively, just a basketball genius in terms of how do you stop people from scoring, how do you defend, how do you rebound.
That preparation showed up in games. While others waited for the ball to bounce, Rodman was already moving, sliding into space before the miss even happened. Isaiah said it felt like Dennis knew where the ball was going before anyone else on the floor. What made it remarkable was how quiet it all looked. No celebration, no scoreboard chasing, just control. Thomas has said that watching Rodman rebound was like watching someone solve a puzzle in real time. Dirk Nowitzki is one of the greatest power forwards in NBA history, and Dennis Rodman left a lasting mark on the legend. Unlike most players who huddled with the team to watch film and strategize, Dennis often had his own routine, sometimes hours long, sometimes eccentric, and rarely in sync with anyone else. Yet once the game started, all of that chaos disappeared. Dirk has admitted he was consistently shocked by how perfectly Rodman executed on the floor. No one seemed to understand how he could skip the standard preparation, ignore team video sessions, and still dominate games with precision.
Sometimes he squeezes, sometimes he hedges a little bit, sometimes he does nothing. So I was like, okay, maybe he just did it one time. Second game, 40 minutes on the clock, he gets up and showers. So he missed all the pregame meetings before the game and had no idea about the coverages that we're doing and kind of did his own thing. And I was like, that was just his routine. At 40 minutes before the game, he was showering. And then after the game, he would just put his own gear on and would go lift hard for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. Wouldn't be with the team, would just be find his workout room, and he had his little workout coach, and then they were just lifting heavy for like an hour and a half after the game, and then he just put on a cowboy hat with these long feathers, didn't shower, and just walked right out the arena.
Every rebound, every defensive rotation, every forced turnover felt intentional, almost methodical, even when it came from someone who appeared completely untethered. What Dirk found most remarkable was the contrast between off-court unpredictability and on-court brilliance. Rodman could wander, nap, or dye his hair any color, and yet the moment the whistle blew, he became a master of control. Dirk has said that watching him made him rethink what it means to prepare. Sometimes, genius doesn't look like what you expect. Reggie Miller has faced countless tough opponents in his career, but Dennis Rodman left an impression that still stands out. Miller recalls a game during Rodman's Detroit days when he grabbed an unbelievable 34 rebounds against the Indiana Pacers, a number that seemed impossible to anyone watching, even seasoned pros like Miller. What made it remarkable wasn't just the quantity, but the way Rodman did it. He barely scored, barely needed the ball in his hands, yet he controlled every missed shot like it was magnetically drawn to him.
In Detroit, here we are trying to make a name for ourselves, and it was a pretty good game, but Dennis Rodman put on an absolute rebounding clinic.
top of the key, no. Rebound, Rodman. Great pass by Worm.
Again, Rodman keeping it alive. How many times does he get his hands on the basketball?
His career high, 34 rebounds, 18 of them at the offensive end. We went down in overtime to the Pistons, but it was an unbelievable rebounding performance by the Worm, the great one, Dennis Rodman.
Miller explained that Rodman's timing, anticipation, and relentless energy made it feel like he was everywhere at once. He didn't just fight for boards, he dictated where the ball would go. The mental toll on Miller's team was just as significant as the physical one. Every rebound Rodman grabbed sent a message. Detroit set the tone, and there was little anyone could do to stop him. It was controlled chaos, executed with surgical precision. That game wasn't about scoring or flashy plays. It was about watching a master at work, a player who could dominate without touching the ball, simply by owning the glass. Robert Parrish, one of the most respected big men in NBA history, has always had a deep appreciation for the nuances of the game. And Dennis Rodman was a perfect example of that. Parrish has said that Rodman brought value in ways that most players didn't even consider. What made him so important wasn't his scoring or highlight reel plays, but his sheer focus on the elements that win championships: defense, rebounds, and controlling the tempo.
I always felt like you really cannot talk about the NBA from a historical perspective without talking about Dennis Rodman. Because in my opinion, that's how much of an impact that he made, which is rare for someone with his notoriety that don't have no interest in scoring the basketball. And that's normally where you get most of your glory from, is offensively. But he took pride on the defensive end, and at 6'8", I think he led the league in rebounding 7 consecutive years, and a heck of a defensive player also.
Parrish pointed out that in a league obsessed with points and statistics, Rodman stood apart. He could finish a game with single-digit points and still be the most influential player on the floor. That willingness to prioritize impact over recognition made him invaluable. Teammates could focus on scoring and offensive schemes, knowing Rodman would handle the gritty, essential work that often goes unnoticed. This mindset made Rodman a unique and necessary presence in the NBA. He didn't chase glory or personal stats. He chased winning. Parrish admired that discipline, noting that Rodman's contributions extended far beyond what showed up in box scores. Michael Jordan has told stories that perfectly capture Dennis Rodman's unpredictability and his brilliance. One of his most famous anecdotes involves Rodman returning to Bulls practice after a Vegas trip. While the rest of the team was warming up, Rodman was already out on the court, moving at his own pace, completely in his own world. Jordan then explained that it took the entire team 4 exhausting laps just to catch up to him.
Now, his whole motive is to get Dennis back in shape. Everybody starts running in a line, and Phil blows a whistle. Whoever's at the back, run to the front. Now, you can't stop. Whoever's in front controls the pace. So I tell everybody in that group, say, look, whoever gets in the front of that row, slow down to a fucking walk. We're just gonna jog and jog and jog and jog. Dennis takes off. Boom. Now, he blows a whistle. Now, we cannot stop until we get back in front of Dennis. It took us 4 laps to catch up to Dennis.
He wasn't late or unprepared in the traditional sense. He was ahead of everyone, running drills, rebounding, and positioning himself exactly where the ball would be. Jordan has said that it was both frustrating and impressive to watch. Rodman didn't follow the normal routine, yet by the time the game started, he was operating at peak efficiency. What stood out to Jordan wasn't just the skill, it was the mindset. Rodman didn't care about appearances, schedules, or how others thought he should prepare. He focused solely on controlling what he could. Every rebound, every defensive position, every possession. Dennis Rodman wasn't just a basketball player, he was a phenomenon. His game didn't rely on scoring, flashy plays, or traditional accolades. Rodman's obsession with rebounds, his unmatched anticipation, and his fearless physicality allowed him to dominate games in ways few could replicate. He approached basketball on his own terms. He didn't follow conventional routines, didn't care about appearances, and often baffled those around him. Yet the moment he stepped on the court, all of that eccentricity transformed into precision. Every rebound, every defensive stop, every hustle play was intentional, the product of a mind that studied angles, movements, and tendencies with a level of focus most players couldn't fathom. Rodman thrived in chaos and created chaos for others. He was unpredictable, relentless, and completely uncontainable. Dennis Rodman redefined what it means to dominate basketball. He proved that impact isn't measured by points, but by control, intensity, and sheer will. He was more than a player, he was the ultimate disruptor, the game's wild card, and one of the most extraordinary competitors the NBA has ever seen.